In a small village in central Java, there stood an old elementary school. The building had clearly aged. Some classrooms were no longer in use due to safety concerns, especially the rear section where an enormous banyan tree loomed. Locals referred to it as the Old Banyan. Its roots jutted from the earth like outstretched arms, its thick canopy casting permanent shade even at noon. There was an eerie stillness about that area. Children were strictly warned never to play near it, not just for safety reasons, but because of the stories. For years, people claimed to see a woman sitting silently on one of the thick branches, always during dusk, always facing away from the school. Her long black hair draped over her back like a curtain. At first glance, she might have been mistaken for someone real. But the sightings multiplied, and witnesses described the same terrifying detail. One longtime teacher, Mr. Wirio, had worked at the school for over 2 decades. He once stayed late to grade papers and decided to take a shortcut through the back path. As he passed the tree, something caught his eye: movement on one of the branches. There she was. A woman in a tattered white dress, seated perfectly still. Her back faced him, motionless. Curious, thinking it was perhaps a student or a trespasser, he stepped closer. That was when everything changed. The wind died. The air grew cold. The sounds of birds and insects ceased entirely. The silence was unnatural, pressing in on him from all sides. He took a few more steps, and then the woman slowly began to turn her head. Her hair still covered her face, but it wasn't her face that horrified him. It was her back. The dress was torn wide open, revealing a gaping hole in her spine. Not a wound, but an empty, decaying cavity. The flesh inside was blackened and rotting, swarming with maggots that writhed and spilled out onto the branch and down to the ground with soft, wet thuds. Frozen in terror, Mr. Wirio couldn't move. Then, without warning, the woman began to rise, not naturally, but stiffly, like a puppet being pulled upward. That was when he ran. He didn't stop until he was home. For days, he was bedridden with fever, too shaken to speak of what he saw. But eventually, the story came out, and more people admitted they'd seen something similar. Whispers began circulating: a Sundel Bolong, a type of vengeful female spirit, known in local lore to die violently and wander with a hole in her back, unable to rest. The story might have remained just a rumor, until Dado, the school's janitor, decided to clear the overgrown brush near the tree. He didn't believe in ghosts. He mocked the tales. But that night, he was found sitting in his home, wide-eyed and shaking, mumbling incoherently. He kept repeating the same thing. She turned around, but there was no face. After that, no one dared go near the tree. The principal had a metal fence installed to block it off entirely. But every few weeks, someone would claim they saw her again, just sitting there, on the same branch, unmoving, with her long black hair swaying slightly in the breeze, still facing away, still waiting. This story came from my cousin, who lives in the outskirts of Yogyakarta, Indonesia. A quiet area with narrow alleys, rice fields, and the sound of food vendors passing by every afternoon. One of their neighbors, Pak Dado, was a street food seller. He pushed a wooden cart, selling bakso, a traditional Indonesian meatball soup. His soup was rich, the meatballs big and soft. People said his food was some of the best around. Every evening, he walked through the neighborhood, calling out, "Bakso! Bakso panas!" which means hot meatball soup. He would enter every alley, every little path, except for one. There was one alley he avoided. No matter how many customers lived there, he would never go in again. If people asked, he just smiled nervously and changed the subject. One night, after a long day, Pak Dado finally shared the truth. It was late. He was tired. He had just a few bowls of soup left. So he decided to enter that alley. Just one more customer, he thought. But something felt wrong the moment he turned in. The air was still. No people. No lights. No sound. Only silence. Then he saw her. A woman standing under a dim street lamp. She wore a long white dress. Her hair was long, messy, covering most of her face. He called out, "Bakso, boo. Mau bakso. Would you like some meatballs?" She didn't answer. She just nodded. He walked his cart closer, stopped right in front of her. He looked up, and that's when he noticed something was wrong. She wasn't standing. She was floating. Her feet didn't touch the ground. Her dress moved even though there was no wind. And when she lifted her head, her face was pale. Her eyes stared too wide. And her smile was far too big. But what truly terrified him was her back. Through a tear in her white dress, he saw a hole. A large, open hole, right in the center of her back. It looked like someone had dug through her body. His hands shook, but somehow, he still prepared the soup, poured it carefully, and handed it to her. She didn't sit like a normal person. She just hovered. Like her body didn't follow the rules of gravity. She started eating. Slowly. Her spoon moved up and down, but it didn't make a sound. No clinking, no slurping. At one point, the spoon seemed to pass through the bowl, as if it wasn't real. Pak Dato just stood there, too afraid to speak, too scared to move. When she finished, she looked at him. Then she reached behind her, into the hole in her back, and pulled out money. She held it out, and whispered, "Thank you for the soup." Pak Dato took the money with a trembling hand. She turned and silently floated away. He didn't look back. He packed up his cart and pushed it home as fast as he could. When he finally reached home, his heart still racing, he sat down, opened his pocket, and looked at the money. But it wasn't money anymore. What he held in his hand was a pile of dry leaves, crumpled, brown, and stained with soup. No numbers. No ink. Just dead leaves. He dropped them in shock. From that day forward, he never went near that alley again. Not during the day. Not at night. Not ever. Some people thought he was just tired. Others believed him. But a few weeks later, another vendor said they saw a woman in a white dress, standing in that same alley. Not moving. Not blinking. Just waiting.